So much for coming. I want to talk to you today about genocide, but first let me tell you something that happened to me. I happened to be in the room when Pope Francis was given a small cross, a Christian crucifix. And it had belonged to a young Syrian man who had been captured by the jihadists. And he was given a choice, convert or die. And he chose. He chose his ancient faith tradition. He chose Christ. And he was beheaded. His mother was able to cover his body and that small cross and bury him. And then she fled to Austria, which led to the story of the Pope getting this cross. This is not an isolated incident. It happens day after day after day to Christians, Yazidis, and other religious minorities in the Middle East. This is a genocide. ISIS is attempting to systematically exterminate entire groups of people simply because of their faith tradition. It is a grave injustice. It is an assault on dignity. It is an attack on the principles of civilization itself. That's why yesterday I'm very proud of the House of Representatives and our leadership team for speaking with a clear voice and saying what is happening in the Middle East is genocide. It was a unanimous vote, not one dissenting voice in the House of Representatives, and it adds to the ongoing body of evidence that shows that the facts are clear. This is a genocide. The United States has an authority and an ability to speak clearly, and it is my hope in the House of Representatives taking this lead, adding to the evidence provided by the International Association of Genocide Scholars, Genocide Watch, the Yazidi Humanitarian Council, Pope Francis, presidential candidates, and others who have spoken clearly that this is a genocide. It will raise international consciousness, set the preconditions for when there is ultimately a settlement, a security settlement in the Middle East that must include these ancient faith traditions who were once part of the rich diversity of that area. That can bring hope again, once again, to the Middle East in the tortured area. So I'm so grateful to Speaker Ryan and our majority leader and conference chair for their leadership on this, but really the entire House of Representatives. This was transpartisan in nature because it spoke to the essential principles of upholding human dignity. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Chris Smith, Chairman of the Human Rights Committee for the Foreign Affairs Committee. I do want to thank our leadership for scheduling yesterday's votes on two essential resolutions, the Genocide Convention and the resolution calling for the establishment of an international Syrian war crimes tribunal. The two of them go hand in glove. Article 6 of the Genocide Convention makes clear that where there is a genocide, there also needs to be prosecutions of those who commit genocide. And our resolution, which was bipartisan, but it was actually spearheaded by our leadership, ensured that these individuals on all sides, from Assad, who has committed horrific acts of brutality with his barrel bombs and his weapons of mass destruction, and all of the other terrible things that he has done, and ISIS and al-Nusra Front, which has targeted Christians. You know, you've got to know this. We have been patient with the administration. As a party, as a Congress, I had my first hearing, and I've had 5 on the genocide against Christians in June of 2013. We made it very clear that this was an emergency hearing. The death toll in Syria at that point was about 90,000, that the administration needed to stand up and declare this to be a genocide. 2013, June. We had the hearing on the Syrian War Crimes Tribunal a couple of months later of 2013, and we had David Crane, who was the chief prosecutor of a Sierra Leone court, which prosecuted, as did the Rwandan court, as did the court in Yugoslavia, people like Slobodan Milosevic. David Crane put Charles Taylor behind bars for 50 years, the president of Liberia. And we need to have a court that will be aggressive, transparent, go after all sides. It is the 1-2 punch. The Genocide Convention, or the genocide designation, must be made by the president. He is not weeks or months, but years late on that. And then secondly, we need to establish this tribunal, the purpose of which would be to hold all parties accountable.
First of all, happy St. Patrick's Week, everybody. I'm at the end of hopefully the end of a 3-week head cold, so bear with me on my voice. I want to thank Mr. Fortenberry and Mr. Smith. I want to thank these two gentlemen for their leadership in this crisis. What more does Secretary John Kerry need to see and hear in order to call these atrocities for what they are? This is genocide, plain and simple. The House has spoken very clearly on this, and we all continue to pray for the persecuted. There's also a crisis at home I want to touch on, and that is the growing opioid epidemic. This is one of those times where we all may know, we certainly do in my family, we all may know other families who have been affected by this growing epidemic, this problem. It destroys lives. It is destroying families. It destroys whole communities. So I want to commend the Senate for passing a bill to improve treatment and recovery programs to address this growing opioid epidemic. Our committees are looking at this right now, and a number of our members have been working on this issue. We need to make addressing this opioid epidemic a priority, and that is exactly what the House will do, and we want to commend our friends in the Senate for quick action on this issue. Lastly, on Thursday, I will be bringing a resolution to the floor authorizing me to file a brief defending our Article 1 powers against the President's executive amnesty. This is the first time the House has taken such a measure. We are the branch of government that is closest to the people. We are defending the people not only against an executive overreach, we are defending the people of this country against a growing branch of unelected bureaucrats who are writing our laws. There is a problem in this country, and it didn't just start with this president, but he has taken it to the nth degree. We have unelected bureaucrats who are writing our laws. That means we, the people, through our elected representatives, are not the final arbiters or drafters of legislation that we have to live under. This is very important. If we are going to maintain the founding principle of being a self-governing people, if we're going to maintain, the legislative branch of government needs to be the one writing the laws, not the executive branch. We don't want unelected bureaucrats writing the laws that we have to live under. If we don't like our laws, we ought to be able to fire an elected official to change those laws if we want to change that. This is why we're filing an amicus brief, to defend our Article 1 powers. This has really now become a case of Article 1 versus Article 2. And we're going to defend Article 1 because we believe passionately in the principle of being a self-governing people, of government by consent of the governed, of putting back in the box this growing fourth branch of government that is becoming more and more and more unaccountable to the people of this country. By restoring the separation of powers, we can reclaim these ideals. This is what we want 2016 to be about. This is one of the key planks of our agenda project. We want 2016 to be a year where we give people a very clear choice, where we offer the people of this country a specific and bold agenda, and we give them a clear and compelling choice so that the people of this country, they get to decide what kind of country we're going to have.
I want to make one point today, especially what happened on the floor yesterday. The president will be at the Capitol today. Too many times in history, we've watched people give a political answer or turn a blind eye away to evil in the world. When we look back in history, they wonder about their comments or the excuses of why they didn't speak up. And none of those excuses are sensible. People are being murdered based upon their religious faith. Many things you find in this House gets partisan. A unanimous vote, almost sheer unanimous when it came to Chris Smith. We have always believed America to be a beacon of freedom and those who would stand up for others. We cannot be silent, and the House has not been silent. Evil cannot exist in the world. We need to open our eyes because it's happening right now. But it can't just be the House that leads. We need the President, we need Kerry, we need America to speak as one voice, just as the House spoke last night. We have a lot of issues before us, but nothing more important than standing up for those who are being murdered based upon religious faith. If we don't speak, who will? It is the foundation of our country, and it's time that the administration sees it.
I want to first ask that you keep the people of Louisiana in your prayers that are experiencing devastating flooding. I know in my district, I went to St. Tammany Parish, which had hundreds of people evacuated. In Tangipahoa Parish in my district, over 2,500 people were evacuated from their homes, as you're seeing a lot of water coming down from the north into parts of even North Louisiana, South Louisiana. These are areas in many cases that are over 60 feet above sea level, so this isn't low-lying areas that normally see flooding. This has been record flooding, and the local leaders have been doing an incredible job of effectively giving evacuation orders to make sure that people are out of harm's way and in dealing with the devastations that have come. So I'm really proud of the work that our local leaders have done. I've been in touch with parish presidents that have been on the front lines of this, as well as working with our federal agencies, from FEMA to the Corps of Engineers to the National Weather Service. So just wanted to mention that as we're seeing a lot of people battling that flooding. I want to shift gears and talk about what our two authors of legislation that passed on the floor yesterday talked about. Both Jeff Fortenberry and Chris Smith have taken an important lead in standing up against atrocities that we're seeing around the world, especially when you look in the Middle East and recognize that Christians and other religious minorities are being persecuted and killed based on their religious belief. This is one thing, and it's genocide. The fact that the House spoke unanimously with one voice, that does not happen often, and I think it sends a powerful message to the world. And as we focus on combating ISIS and stopping the devastating run that they're making, not only through the Middle East, but their intents are to continue targeting the West as well. The fact that we spoke with a strong voice helps unify the rest of the nations in the world that stand with us against these kind of atrocities. And then finally, when you look at what we're going to be taking up on Thursday, the House is going to be speaking and sending a message to the Supreme Court, who asked for the House and the administration to speak up about this Article 1 versus Article 2 separation of powers battle. The president does not have the ability to write laws. It's his job to execute the laws that are passed by Congress. But when you look at the case that's brought before the Supreme Court by Texas and other states, the president overstepped his authority. And the House is going to be speaking very loudly that the president can't write laws. It's the legislative branch that has that authority, and we're going to make that very clear to the Supreme Court in the amicus brief that the Speaker will be bringing up on the floor.
Let me join in thanking the leadership of both Representative Fortenberry and Representative Smith on this horrific genocide that is taking place. This is an important stand that we are taking as Americans. I also want to recognize Speaker Ryan and his comments on Article 1. You know, as Americans, we cherish a government that is of the people, by the people. Fathers defined a just government as one that derives its power from the consent of the governed. And today, people fear that they are losing representative government. And we're frustrated because the power to make the best decisions for ourselves, for our families, for our communities is being taken away by a government that thinks it knows best and isn't being held accountable. And these frustrations are a symptom that we, the people, are losing our voice, our power to ensure that every single dollar of taxpayer money is being spent wisely, that every decision by federal agencies is being subjected to the citizens' consent and accountability. Too much of the government is on autopilot, and it's time that we challenge that status quo. One big reason for all of this actually comes from what is known in Washington, D.C. as unauthorized spending, which prevents the American people from exercising their authority to review, to rethink, and perhaps eliminate government programs. And that's why I'm pleased to be introducing this week the USA Act, which reclaims that power of we the people. It holds federal bureaucrats accountable. It's just one of the many ideas that's being promoted as we build an agenda here in the People's House, an agenda to restore a confident America.
Yesterday, the House of Representatives voted unanimously to condemn the atrocities committed by ISIS against religious and ethnic minorities as crimes against humanity. Every day, ISIS continues to perpetuate horrific acts of violence against the innocent. It's not enough simply to recognize what's going on. We need action, and we need it now. We need White House leadership that is concerned with protecting American values abroad and securing the safety of American lives here at home. The House has made clear its position. Now the President must choose to defend the principles of this nation at home and abroad.
Questions? Deirdre.
Speaker Ryan, yesterday you said the images you saw at Trump's rallies were very concerning and urged the candidates to take responsibility for their actions. Donald Trump has repeatedly refused to take action for the actions of his rallies. Do you continue to stand behind your vow that you'll support the nominee?
Yeah, my position hasn't changed on that. I'd make 2 points. Number one, it's pretty clear that there's a concerted effort by people on the left to disrupt these rallies, to disrupt these events, and that needs to be condemned, and we condemn that. Having said that, I think as candidates, all candidates have an obligation to do what they can do to try and provide an atmosphere of harmony, to reduce violence, to not incite violence, and to make sure that we are going to unite the country around ideas that unite the country so that we can actually fix our country's problems. Look, Deirdre, what we can control is who we are and what we do here in the House. This is why we have an agenda project in the first place. We think the country's headed in the wrong direction. We think people are very anxious and upset because they see that they're losing control of their own destiny and their own country and their own government. So let's channel that passion, that anxiety, that concern that we all share into action and solutions. This is why we have an agenda project, so that we're going to take solutions to the country to show how we reclaim this country, how we reclaim our Article I powers, government by consent, how we get this economy growing, how we get people out of poverty, how we make sure that we don't have a debt crisis to give the next generation a lower standard of living, how do we keep ourselves safe. This is what we believe we need to do, which is go to the country with solutions and let them choose. And that is what we can control. All these other things on the top of the ticket are things that are not within our control. But as far as the substance and the ideas and the principles and the solutions that we offering the country, that's what we can do, and that is exactly what we're doing. Jake.
You've now called him out on three separate occasions.
Say that again?
You've now criticized Trump on 3 separate occasions. And these are pretty fundamental issues that you have with him, barring Muslims from the country, perhaps inciting violence. Can you explain to people why you could still stand behind him if you believe that these are fundamental issues you have with him?
Jake, the people, the Republican primary voters are going to make this decision. This is not our decision to make.
But you're the Speaker of the House.
I am the Speaker of the House, so I'm going to keep doing what I said I'm going to do, which is when I see our principles being distorted, we're going to stand up in defense of our principles. Not just Republican principles, conservative principles, but American principles. At the same time, what can we control? We can control our agenda. That's what we're doing. With respect to who the nominee is going to be, that's going to be selected by the voters.
Mr. Speaker, 2 years ago, in the second year of Ryan Murray, you had an orderly budget process, a relatively orderly appropriations process. What is different now? Why is the second year of this 2-year deal proving to be so difficult when it comes to doing a budget?
I think it's just all of the anxiety is coming to a crescendo in this country. You have to understand we're the body of government closest to the people. We're up for election every other year, and there's just a lot of anxiety that's out there. That's point number one. Point number two, we want to pass a budget. We believe it's very important for budgeting reasons. I used to write budgets here, but I promise in this speakership that we're not going to have a top-down, cram it down people's throat kind of leadership. We're going to make decisions as a team. We're going to push power out to the members, and we're going to make a team decision on this issue. Now, I do believe it's very fundamental to who we are as as the legislative branch of government that we reclaim our Article I powers and have a full functioning appropriations process. We feel very strongly about to have a team decision by this conference as to how we proceed on this. Tom Price posted the markup last night. They're moving to markup on Wednesday. We're proceeding with our plan, and at the end of the day, the decision will be made by all of the members of the Republican conference. We want to work together to get this done, but it's going to be a decision ultimately left up to our members.
Can you give us an indication since we last talked? You've now spoken to all 4 remaining presidential candidates about this